Dr. Sarah Chan had seen death in many forms during her 12 years as a field medic, but she had never heard it howl. The sound cut through the recycled air of the medical bay aboard the UES Meridian, a haunting ululation that made the hair on her arms stand on end. It was primal, desperate, and utterly alien, yet somehow familiar in its raw anguish. Sarah dropped her inventory tablet and rushed toward the source of the sound, her medical training overriding the instinctive fear that tried to root her feet to the deck. The cargo bay had been hastily converted into a triage area after their unexpected encounter with a damaged alien vessel 3 hours ago. What the crew had initially thought was space debris turned out to be a crippled ship carrying two beings unlike anything in the galactic database. The larger of the two, nearly 7 feet tall with midnight black fur and lupin features, stood guard over his companion with the fierce protectiveness of a creature that had never known surrender. As Sarah entered the improvised medical area, she found Captain Morrison and Chief Science Officer Valdez maintaining what they probably thought was a safe distance from the aliens. The Standing One, whom they had designated Alpha for lack of a better term, had his lips pulled back to reveal impressive canines. His golden eyes tracked every movement in the room while one clawed hand rested protectively on his companion's shoulder. The howling was coming from the smaller alien, Beta, according to their informal classification system. This one was clearly female, with lighter gray fur and more delicate features, though she was still easily 6 feet tall and powerfully built. But whatever strength she possessed was failing rapidly. Her breathing was labored, her normally bright amber eyes were dimming, and a series of deep gashes across her torso leaked a viscous purple fluid that Sarah's scanner identified as some form of hemolymph. "Status report," Sarah demanded, her voice crisp and professional despite the churning in her stomach. The alien's condition was clearly critical. Captain Morrison, a grizzled veteran of the Frontier Wars, looked relieved to see her. "We tried to approach, but the male won't let us near. He's been protective. Communications are still down. We can't understand a word they're saying." "Have you tried universal medical protocols?" Sarah asked, already moving toward her equipment locker. "Doc, that thing has claws that could gut a man in seconds. We're not exactly dealing with a cooperative patient here." Sarah turned to face her captain, her dark eyes flashing with the kind of determination that had earned her 3 commendations for service under fire. "Then, we make him understand that we're here to help." She began pulling items from her medical kit: scanner, portable surgical unit, blood coagulants, and a broad-spectrum antibiotic that had proven effective against most known alien pathogens. The male alien's ears flicked toward her as she approached, his growl deepening to a rumble that seemed to vibrate through the deck plating. "Easy," Sarah murmured, using the same tone she might with a frightened animal. "I'm a doctor. I want to help." The alien cocked his head slightly, studying her with an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. His nostrils flared as he scented her, and Sarah realized he was analyzing her for threats. She slowly knelt beside her equipment, making no sudden movements as she powered up her medical scanner. The device's soft hum filled the air, and she held it up so both aliens could see it clearly. "Medical scanner," she said, pointing to the device and then to the injured female. "Help. Heal." Understanding flickered in the male's golden eyes, but he didn't move away from his companion. Instead, he leaned down and nuzzled the female's neck, eliciting a weak whimper from her. When he looked back at Sarah, there was something devastating in his expression, a grief so raw that it transcended species barriers. Sarah's heart clenched as she recognized the look. She had seen it countless times in the faces of soldiers watching their comrades die, parents holding dying children, lovers saying goodbye. It was the expression of someone facing the loss of everything that mattered to them. The female alien, mate, Sarah corrected herself, because the bond between these two was obvious, was dying. Her vital signs were cascading towards system failure, and without immediate intervention, she would be gone within the hour. "Please," Sarah whispered, not caring that they couldn't understand her words, but hoping they might understand her tone. "Let me try." The male studied her for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to the medical equipment and back again. Sarah could almost see the internal struggle playing out, the desperate hope warring with the protective instinct to trust no one with his mate's life. Finally, With obvious reluctance, he stepped back just far enough to allow Sarah access to the injured female. But he remained close enough to strike if Sarah made any move he interpreted as threatening. Sarah nodded her thanks and began her examination. The scanner's readings painted a grim picture. Multiple puncture wounds, severe blood loss, and what appeared to be some form of toxin in her system. The alien's physiology was similar enough to known species that Sarah's equipment could provide basic readings, but different enough that standard treatments might prove ineffective or even harmful. Chief Valdez, she called without looking up from her patient. I need you to run a full spectral analysis on this blood sample. Look for any unusual compounds or toxins. And, Captain, I need all available data on their ship's construction and any weapons that might have caused these injuries. As her colleagues hurried to comply, Sarah continued her assessment. The female's breathing was becoming increasingly shallow, and her mate's distress was palpable. He began making soft, chittering sounds, almost like a conversation, and Sarah realized he was talking to his unconscious companion. Working quickly, Sarah applied a general-purpose coagulant to the worst of the wounds. The bleeding slowed, but didn't stop entirely. The scanner indicated that the alien's blood chemistry was more complex than human blood, with additional compounds that served functions Sarah could only guess at. Sarah, Chief Valdez's voice crackled over the comm. I'm reading high levels of neurotoxin in that blood sample. Whatever hit her, it was designed to cause paralysis and eventual respiratory failure. Sarah's jaw tightened. How long? At current concentration levels? Maybe 30 minutes before her nervous system shuts down completely. The male alien's head snapped toward the comm unit, and, though he couldn't understand the words, something in Valdez's tone must have conveyed the gravity of the situation. His growl became a keening whine, and he gently stroked his mate's face with one clawed hand. Sarah looked at her limited supplies and made a decision that would either save a life or potentially start an interstellar incident. I'm going to try a neural stimulant to counteract the toxin. It's designed for human physiology, but the basic principle should be similar. Doc, you don't know how that will affect their system, Captain Morrison warned. If I don't try, she dies anyway. Sarah prepared the injector, adjusting the dose downward to account for the unknown variables. Sometimes you have to take a calculated risk. The male alien watched her every movement as she approached with the injector. When she gestured toward his mate's neck, indicating where she intended to administer the drug, he surprised her by gently lifting the female's head to expose the injection site. Thank you, Sarah breathed, and something in her voice must have conveyed meaning beyond language because the male's expression softened slightly. The injector hissed as it delivered its payload, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, the female's breathing deepened slightly, and her eyelids fluttered. The change was subtle, but both Sarah and the male alien noticed it immediately. Encouraged, Sarah began working on the puncture wounds with more aggressive treatment. She applied surgical sealant to close the deeper gashes and administered a broad-spectrum healing accelerator that would boost the alien's natural recovery systems, if they were at all similar to human biology. Minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the soft beeps of Sarah's monitoring equipment and the occasional growl from the male alien when someone moved too quickly. Gradually, the female's vital signs began to stabilize. Her breathing became less labored, and some color returned to her gray fur. Then her eyes opened. They were beautiful eyes, Sarah thought, a warm amber that held intelligence and awareness. The female looked around in confusion before her gaze settled on her mate's face. She made a soft sound, almost like a purr, and he responded by gently touching his forehead to hers. The moment was so intimate, so filled with love and relief, that Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. In that instant, the aliens weren't specimens or potential threats. They were people, and she had just helped save a life that mattered to someone. The female tried to sit up, but her mate gently pressed her back down with his hand. He then did something that surprised everyone in the room. He looked directly at Sarah and pressed his hand to his chest, then gestured toward her. I think he's trying to thank you, Captain Morrison said quietly. Sarah nodded to the alien and then pointed to herself. Sarah, she said clearly. Then she pointed to him and raised her eyebrows questioningly. The male considered for a moment, then placed his hand on his chest again. Kethvar Drakon, he said in a voice like controlled thunder. Drakon, Sarah repeated, and his ears perked up at her pronunciation. The female spoke then, her voice weaker, but carrying the same melodic quality as her mates. Kitvar Silana. Silana, Sarah said, earning what might have been a smile from the injured alien. Chief Valdez approached cautiously, his scanner in hand. Doc, her vital signs are improving rapidly. Whatever you did, it worked. Sarah felt a surge of relief, but she knew they weren't out of danger yet. We need to monitor her closely for the next few hours. Alien physiology means there could be delayed reactions to the treatment. Drakon seemed to understand the general meaning, because he settled into a protective crouch beside his mate's makeshift bed. His golden eyes never left Sarah's face, but the hostility was gone, replaced by something that looked remarkably like gratitude. As Sarah packed up her equipment, she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was bigger than just one successful medical intervention. First contact with a new species was always significant, but this felt different. The way Drakon had trusted her with his mate's life, the obvious intelligence and emotional depth these beings possessed, it suggested that humanity might have just gained something more valuable than another entry in the galactic species database. They might have gained allies. Captain, she said quietly, I recommend we prepare proper quarters for our guests. Something tells me this is just the beginning of a much larger story. Morrison nodded, his expression thoughtful. Any recommendations for how we proceed? Sarah looked back at the two aliens, now resting together with the quiet contentment of mates who had faced death and survived. Carefully, sir, but with compassion. Whatever these people have been through, whatever brought them to our doorstep dying, they deserve our best efforts to help them. Understood. Document. I'll have Chief Valdez prepare a full linguistic analysis. If we're going to help them, we need to figure out how to communicate properly. As the medical bay settled into quiet monitoring mode, Sarah found herself wondering about the story behind her patients. What had injured Selena so severely? Where had they come from? And were there others like them? Most importantly, what would this encounter mean for humanity's place in the galaxy? She had a feeling she was about to find out, and despite the uncertainty, she was looking forward to learning more about the remarkable beings who had literally dropped out of space into their lives. After all, as her grandmother used to say, the best friendships often began with someone needing help and someone else willing to provide it. In the depths of space, surrounded by the vast unknown, Dr. Sarah Chun had just discovered that some universal truths transcended species barriers. Love, loyalty, and the desire to preserve life. These were constants that could bridge any gap between worlds. She just hoped that the rest of the galaxy would be ready for what came next. 3 days after the initial encounter, the UES Meridian's conference room had been transformed into something resembling a diplomatic meeting space. Sarah sat across from Drakon and Selena, who had recovered enough to participate in what everyone hoped would be productive first contact discussions. Chief Valdez had made remarkable progress with the translation matrix, and basic communication was now possible, though complex concepts still required careful explanation. Selena looked much better, though she still moved with the careful precision of someone recovering from serious injury. Her gray fur had regained its luster, and her amber eyes were bright with intelligence and curiosity. Drakon remained protectively close to her side, but his aggressive posture had been replaced by alert watchfulness. The translation system is still imperfect, Chief Valdez explained as he calibrated the device. But we should be able to handle basic conversation. Doctor, you might want to start with simple medical questions, since that's the context they trust you in. Sarah nodded and activated the translator. Selena, how are you feeling today? The device processed her words and rendered them in what sounded like a complex mixture of growls, chittering, and melodic tones. Selena's ears perked up, and she responded in her own language. After a moment, the translator offered a slightly stilted but comprehensible reply. I am healing well. Your medicine knowledge saved my life force. My packbond thanks you. Sarah smiled, both at the successful communication and the formal gratitude. I'm glad I could help. Can you tell us what happened to you? What caused your injuries? Drakon and Selena exchanged a long look, and Sarah caught a flicker of something. Fear? Anger? pain in their expressions. When Drakon spoke, his voice carried a weight that made the translator's mechanical rendering seem almost inadequate. We are Kethvar. Our people were warriors of honor. We controlled 3 sun systems, many worlds. But the destroyers came. Captain Morrison leaned forward. Destroyers? Selena's voice was softer, but no less intense. Machine minds. No flesh, no life force, only hunger for ending. They consume worlds, leave nothing. Our fleets fought bravely, but she gestured helplessly, and the translation matrix struggled with what followed before offering. Insufficient. Not enough. We were defeated. The poison weapons, Drakon continued. They used them to make death slow, painful, to break spirit before breaking body. Many of our people chose honor death rather than suffer the slow ending. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. How many of your people survived? Unknown. Selena and I escaped an emergency vessel when our command ship was destroyed. We searched for others, but found only empty ships, dead worlds. Drakon's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. We may be the last. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Captain Morrison was the first to speak. These destroyers, are they still active? Are they expanding their territory? Yes, Selena confirmed grimly. They move toward Galactic Center, consuming everything. They will not stop until all life is ended. Chief Valdez looked up from his data pad, his expression troubled. Captain, if their testimony is accurate, we're looking at an extinction-level threat moving in our general direction. Sarah studied the 2 aliens, noting the way they unconsciously leaned into each other for comfort. Whatever they had witnessed, it had been traumatic enough to leave deep psychological scars alongside the physical ones. She made a decision that would have significant ramifications. Drakon, Selena, would you be willing to share your star charts with us? Help us understand the scope of this threat. The 2 Kethvar conferred quietly in their own language before Drakon nodded. We will share knowledge. But why? Your people are unknown to us. You could flee to far regions, avoid the destroyers entirely. Because that's not what humans do, Sarah said firmly. We don't abandon people to face extinction alone. The translator struggled with the concept for a moment before rendering something close to the intended meaning. Both aliens stared at her with expressions of surprise and what might have been hope. Captain Morrison cleared his throat. Dr. Chun speaks for herself, of course. Command will need to evaluate any potential military action based on no, Sarah interrupted, surprising everyone, including herself. She speaks for what humanity should be. Captain, we can't just ignore this. Selena spoke quietly. Your healer person shows honor strength. But the destroyers are beyond stopping. They have consumed the fleets of dozen species. What can one small ship do? One small ship can carry a message, Sarah replied. One small ship can bear witness. And one small ship can refuse to let courage die alone in the dark. Drakon's golden eyes widened, and he spoke rapidly in his own language to Selena. When he turned back to the humans, there was something new in his expression, recognition. You speak as our honor codes teach, to stand with pack against all threats, even unto death. He paused, searching for words. Your species, you have warrior hearts. Captain Morrison looked uncomfortable. We've had our share of conflicts, yes. Not conflict warriors, Drakon clarified, his frustration with the translator evident. Warriors who fight for others. Warriors who choose difficult path because it is right path. Sarah nodded slowly. Yes, we have those. More than you might think. Chief Valdez had been quietly working at his console during the conversation. Now, he looked up with excitement. Captain, I've been analyzing their ship's data core. The technology they're describing, these destroyers, it's unlike anything in our databases, but there are some interesting patterns. Explain, Morrison commanded. The Kethvar ship's defensive systems show evidence of adaptation during combat. Their technology is designed to learn and evolve under fire. If we could combine that with human tactical innovation. He trailed off, shaking his head. It's a long shot, but it might be possible to develop effective countermeasures. Selena had been following the conversation as best she could with the translator's help. Now she spoke with growing excitement. Your people are builders of new things, makers of solutions. In a manner of speaking, yes, Sarah replied. We're very good at solving problems, especially when lives are at stake. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the bridge. Captain Morrison's comlink crackled to life. Captain to the bridge, priority 1. We've got multiple contacts on long-range sensors, and they're not showing on any known signature database. Morrison stood quickly. How many contacts? 12 ships, sir. Large ones. And, Captain, they're not running from something. They're hunting. Drakon and Selena were on their feet instantly, their relaxed posture replaced by the tense alertness of predators sensing danger. Drakon spoke rapidly, and the translator offered, "Destroyer scout pack. They follow our trail. How long until they reach us?" Sarah asked, her medical training kicking in as she began calculating evacuation procedures for her patients. "At current velocity, approximately 4 hours," came the reply from the bridge. Captain Morrison's expression was grim. "All hands to battle stations. Chief Valdez, I need everything you can give me about their weapons and tactics. Dr. Chun, prepare for possible casualties." "Wait," Drakon said, his voice carrying urgent authority. "Your ship, it is not war vessel. We're a medical frigate," Morrison confirmed. "We have defensive capabilities, but we're not equipped for major combat." Selena and Drakon exchanged another look, and Sarah saw something pass between them, a communication that went beyond words or translator matrices. When Drakon spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a momentous decision. "Our ship is damaged, but weapon systems function. We will fight with you." "That's not necessary," Morrison began, but Selena cut him off. "Is necessary? You save pack bond. Honor demands we stand with you." She paused, struggling with the translator. "Also, practical. Alone, your ship dies quickly. Together, we might survive." Sarah looked at the two aliens and saw something that transcended species differences. These weren't just desperate survivors looking for protection. They were warriors offering to risk their lives for people who had shown them kindness. The realization hit her like a physical blow. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think we need to accept their offer." "Dr. Chun, with respect, this is a military decision." "No, sir. This is a human decision." Sarah stood, facing her captain across the conference table. "We have a choice here. We can try to run and probably get caught and destroyed, or we can stand and fight alongside people who need our help. To me, that's not a difficult choice." Chief Valdez looked up from his console. "Captain, their ship's power signature is actually compatible with our defense grid. If we could establish a tactical link." Morrison studied the readouts, his expression thoughtful. "You're suggesting we combine our defensive systems?" "More than that," Drakon interjected, apparently following more of the conversation than the translator indicated. "Kethvar tactics, human innovation. Pack hunt the hunters." The idea was audacious, unprecedented, and probably suicidal. It was also, Sarah realized, exactly the kind of desperate gamble that humans excelled at. More importantly, it was the right thing to do. 12 destroyer ships versus 1 medical frigate and 1 damaged alien vessel, Captain Morrison mused. "Those are terrible odds." "In conventional thinking, yes," Sarah agreed. "But we're not talking about conventional warfare. We're talking about 2 species who refuse to give up, working together for the first time in history. I like our chances." Selena spoke, her voice carrying quiet conviction. "Destroyers expect fear, expect fleeing. They do not expect prey that fights. This can be advantage." Chief Valdez was already pulling up tactical displays. "I can have our systems linked within 2 hours. Their ship's AI can interface with our navigation and fire control." Captain Morrison looked around the room at the faces staring back at him. His medical officer with her quiet determination, his science chief with his eager innovation, and 2 aliens who had chosen to risk their lives for strangers who had shown them compassion. The decision, when it came, was easier than it should have been. "All right, we make our stand here. Chief, get those systems linked. Dr. Chun, prepare for combat casualties. And our new friends." He looked at Drakon and Selena. "Welcome to the pack." Drakon's response bypassed the translator entirely. He stood, placed his hand over his heart, and spoke directly in heavily accented English. "For honor. For pack. For hope." As the crew rushed to prepare for battle, Sarah couldn't help but think that whatever happened in the next few hours, history would remember this moment. The moment when 2 species, strangers until 3 days ago, chose to stand together against annihilation. It might not be enough to save them, but it would prove beyond any doubt that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the odds. The destroyers were coming, but they would find more than just prey waiting for them. They would find something they had never encountered before. The combined fury of humans who refused to abandon their friends and Kethvar, who had rediscovered their reason to fight. In the vast darkness of space, hope was about to show its teeth. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation and careful coordination. Sarah had never seen anything like the technological integration taking place between the human and Kethvar systems. Chief Valdez worked alongside Drakon, their heads bent over displays that showed incomprehensible streams of data and tactical projections. Despite the language barrier, they seemed to communicate through the universal language of mathematics and physics. The Kethvar targeting system is incredible, Valdez explained to Captain Morrison. It's not just about hitting targets. It's about predicting where they'll be based on their behavioral patterns. It's like hunting psychology converted into weapons technology. Drakon nodded approvingly at the translation. Destroyers have patterns. They think in straight lines, seek efficient paths. But pack hunters think in curves, in surprises. Sarah was dividing her time between medical preparations and observing the tactical discussions. The more she learned about their new allies, the more impressed she became. The Kethvar weren't just warriors. They were strategic thinkers who approached combat like a complex puzzle to be solved. Selena, despite her recent injuries, had insisted on helping with the coordination efforts. She was currently working with the navigation team, her knowledge of destroyer movement patterns proving invaluable. They will approach from 3 vectors, she explained, her English improving rapidly as she worked with the translation matrix. Standard destroyer formation. Center group draws attention, while flanking groups move for kill strikes. So we know their playbook, Morrison mused. That gives us an advantage. Small advantage, Drakon corrected. They know we have information about their tactics. They will adapt, but slowly. Machines learn, but not like living minds. Sarah's calmly chimed. Dr. Chun, please report to Medical Bay. We have a situation. She hurried through the corridors, noting how efficiently the crew was preparing for combat. Everyone seemed to understand that they were about to attempt something that had never been tried before, a joint human-alien military operation against a technologically superior enemy. In the medical bay, she found Ensign Torres, one of the younger crew members, looking pale and shaky. What's the problem, Torres? It's not a medical problem. Document. Well, not exactly. Torres gestured toward the main display, which showed the approaching destroyer fleet. I've been running probability calculations on the upcoming engagement. The numbers, they're not good. Sarah looked at the tactical display. 12 massive ships, each one larger than the Meridian and the Kethvar vessel combined, approaching in perfect formation. The mathematical odds were indeed sobering. Torres, look at me. Sarah's voice carried the authority of someone who had faced impossible situations before. Mathematics don't account for everything. They don't account for courage, innovation, or the fact that sometimes the right thing to do is also the smart thing to do. But, Doc, even with the aliens helping us, we're outnumbered 6-1. Yes, we are. But we're not just 2 ships anymore, Torres. We're a pack. Sarah realized she was unconsciously adopting Kethvar terminology. And packs don't think like individuals. They think like a collective organism with multiple brains working in perfect coordination. Before Torres could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. All hands, this is Captain Morrison. The enemy fleet will be in weapons range in 30 minutes. I want everyone to understand what we're about to attempt. We're going to show these destroyers that there's something in this galaxy they haven't encountered before. The combined determination of species who refuse to let evil triumph unopposed. Sarah left Torres to his calculations and headed for the bridge. As she entered, she was struck by the scene before her. Human and Kethvar crew members, because that's what they were now, crew members, working side by side at integrated control stations. The bridge had been reconfigured to accommodate both species, with Drakon at the weapons console and Selena at tactical coordination. Status report, Sarah requested. Systems integration is complete, Chief Valdez announced. We're linked not just technologically, but strategically. Their AI and our computers are sharing processing power and tactical analysis in real time. Captain Morrison looked up from his command station. Dr. Chun, I know this isn't your area of expertise, but I want your opinion. Are we doing the right thing here? Sarah didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Whatever happens in the next hour, we'll know we stood up when it counted. Selena turned from her station. Destroyer-led elements now in long-range sensor contact. They have detected us. Changing formation to attack configuration. The main display showed the enemy ships adjusting their approach. Instead of the standard three-pronged attack Selena had predicted, they were forming a single concentrated spearhead aimed directly at the Allied ships. They're adapting, Drakon growled. They know we have tactical knowledge. Good, Morrison said grimly. Let them adapt. We're about to show them something they've never seen before. The next few minutes were tense as the opposing forces maneuvered for position. Sarah found herself holding her breath as she watched the tactical display. The destroyer ships moved with mechanical precision, their formation perfect and their approach inexorable. Weapons range in 2 minutes, announced the tactical officer. Kethvar ship ready, Drakon reported. All systems green. UES Meridian ready for combat, Morrison confirmed. Sarah watched the two species working together with seamless coordination. Whatever differences existed between human and Kethvar psychology, they seemed to complement each other perfectly in the crucible of combat preparation. Contact, Selena announced. Lead destroyer launching attack drones. The display showed dozens of smaller contacts separating from the main ships and accelerating toward the Allied vessels. These weren't just weapons. They were autonomous hunter-killers designed to overwhelm defensive systems through sheer numbers. Implementing pack protocol, Drakon announced, and suddenly the human crew understood what that meant. Instead of trying to destroy all the attack drones, an impossible task given their numbers, the Allied ships began moving in a complex dance that confused the drones' targeting systems. The Meridian and the Kethvar ship moved in perfect synchronization, creating overlapping fields of defensive fire while simultaneously hunting the larger destroyer ships. My God, Chief Valdez breathed. They're not just fighting as two ships. They're fighting as a single organism. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness of space with deadly beauty. Destroyer energy beams lanced out with devastating precision, but they struck empty space where the Allied ships had been moments before. Meanwhile, the combined return fire from human and Kethvar weapon systems found their marks with uncanny accuracy. One destroyer taking heavy damage, the tactical officer reported. Their shields are failing. But the celebration was premature. Even as one destroyer ship began to falter, the others adapted their tactics again. They spread out, forcing the Allied ships to divide their attention among multiple targets. They're learning, Selena observed grimly. Faster than expected. Then, we learn faster, Sarah said from her position at the medical station. That's what humans do. We adapt in real time. As if responding to her words, Chief Valdez suddenly looked up from his console with excitement. Captain, I'm reading fluctuations in their shield harmonics. Each time they adapt, they have to recalibrate their defensive systems. There's a window, about 3 seconds, where they're vulnerable. Drakon's ears perked up. Pack hunting opportunity. We force adaptation, then strike during recalibration. What followed was unlike anything in the history of space combat. The Allied ships began a series of feints and false attacks, each one forcing the destroyers to adjust their defensive configurations. And in each 3-second window of vulnerability, precise strikes found their targets. It was working, but the cost was high. The Meridian had taken several hits, and Sarah's medical bay was receiving the first wave of casualties. As she worked to treat plasma burns and concussion injuries, she could hear the ongoing battle through the intercom. Second destroyer disabled, came the report. But we're taking heavy fire. Shield strength down to 60%. Sarah paused in her treatment of an injured engineer to look at the tactical display. 10 destroyers remained, and they were closing in for the kill. Even with their innovative tactics, the Allies were running out of room to maneuver. Dr. Chun to the bridge, came the urgent call. She left her patients in the capable hands of her medical assistants and rushed to the bridge. When she arrived, she found the command crew gathered around Drakon, who was explaining something with urgent intensity. What's the situation? She asked. Drakon has an idea, Captain Morrison explained. But it's extremely risky. The Kethvar warrior looked at Sarah with his golden eyes. Destroyers expect tactics, expect clever fighting. But there's one thing they do not expect, which is sacrifice for others. They understand individual survival, efficient destruction. They do not understand choosing death so that packmates may live. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What are you proposing? Selena stepped forward, her amber eyes bright with determination. Our ship is damaged beyond full repair, but engine core still has power. If we set collision course for destroyer command ship. No, Sarah said immediately. Absolutely not. We don't abandon our friends. Not abandon, Drakon corrected gently. Honor. Greatest honor of Pack is to ensure Pack survives. Command ship destroyed. Other destroyers lose coordination advantage. Captain Morrison looked torn. The tactical analysis supports their assessment. Without central coordination, the remaining destroyers would be operating independently. We could pick them off one by one. But at the cost of 2 lives, Sarah protested. There has to be another way. Selena approached Sarah and placed a clawed hand gently on her shoulder. You gave me life when death was certain. Now, that life has purpose, to save others who showed kindness to strangers. The debate was interrupted by another urgent report. Captain, they're launching a full-scale assault. All remaining destroyers converging on our position. On the tactical display, the situation looked hopeless. 10 massive ships, all of them now focused on destroying the small allied force that had dared to resist them. Even with their innovative tactics, the odds were overwhelming. Drakon moved toward the communications console. I will return to our ship. Selena will remain here, coordinate tactical data for your survival. I will not leave you, Selena said fiercely. You will, Drakon replied with gentle firmness. Pack needs you alive. Humans need knowledge of destroyers. Future fights need wisdom you carry. Sarah watched the exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't just about tactical advantage. It was about ensuring that their sacrifice would mean something beyond this single battle. Wait, she said suddenly. What if you don't have to die? What if we could achieve the same tactical result without losing anyone? All eyes turned to her. Explain, Captain Morrison commanded. Chief Valdez, could we modify a probe with a Kethvar engine core? Create an autonomous ramming device that would achieve the same result. Valdez was already running calculations. It's possible, but we need precise targeting data and someone to guide it manually for the final approach. Remote guidance, Sarah insisted. No one has to die. Drakon shook his head. Destroyers will detect autonomous guidance, will intercept probe. Needs live pilot to make real-time adjustments, to think like hunter instead of machine. The moral dilemma hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Save 2 lives and probably doom everyone, or allow the sacrifice and potentially win the day. It was Selena who broke the deadlock. Compromise. 1 pilot, not 2. Drakon guides probe to target. I remain here, help coordinate finishing battle. Selena, no, Drakon Gold. Yes, she replied firmly. Pack leader makes decisions for pack survival. I am pack leader now. Sarah looked at the 2 Kethvar and realized she was witnessing something profound. They weren't just making a tactical decision. They were defining what their species would become in its darkest hour. Captain, she said quietly, I think we need to honor their choice. Morrison nodded slowly. Very well. Chief Valdez, prepare the pro modification. Drakon, you'll have our eternal gratitude. As the bridge crew rushed to implement the desperate plan, Sarah found herself standing beside Selena, both of them watching Drakon prepare for what might be his final mission. He's very brave, Sarah said softly. All Pack is brave when Pack is threatened, Selena replied. But yes, he is special brave. That is why I choose him as mate. And you're staying behind to help us finish this? Selena turned to look at Sarah with her amber eyes. You saved my life. Now I help save many lives. This is how Pack grows stronger. Outside the viewports, the destroyer fleet was closing in for the kill, unaware that their prey had teeth sharper than they had ever imagined. The hunt was about to reach its climax. 6 months after the Battle of the Meridian, as historians would later call it, Dr. Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the UHKS Unity, flagship of the Grand Alliance fleet. The massive vessel was a testament to what could be accomplished when diverse species work together. Human engineering, Kethvar tactical systems, crystalline defensive matrices, and technologies from a dozen other civilizations all integrated into a single, formidable warship. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, Sarah could see the fleet assembled for the liberation of Kethvar Prime, the original homeworld of Drakon and Selena's people. 300 ships from 47 different species, all united under a banner that had become known throughout the galaxy as the symbol of hope against the destroyer plague. Penny, for your thoughts? Captain Morrison approached from behind, his voice carrying the easy familiarity of shared hardship and mutual respect. I was thinking about how much has changed, Sarah replied. 6 months ago, we were a medical frigate on a routine supply run. Now we're part of the largest military alliance in galactic history. Morrison joined her at the viewport, looking out at the assembled fleet. Any regrets about how we handled that first encounter? None, Sarah said firmly. Every decision we made led to this moment. Even the difficult ones. The difficult ones. Sarah's mind went to the memorial service they had held for Drakon just 3 weeks ago. Representatives from every member species of the Alliance had attended, and his sacrifice had been honored not just as a military necessity, but as the foundational act of courage that had made everything else possible. Selena had spoken at the service, her words translated into dozens of languages and broadcast across Alliance space. My mate died believing that beings who fight for others are stronger than those who fight only for themselves. Look around you. See how his belief has become reality. Dr. Chun, please report to Alliance Command, came the announcement over the ship's communication system. Sarah made her way through corridors that bustled with the activity of beings from across the galaxy. The sight never ceased to amaze her. Humans working alongside towering Kethvar warriors, crystalline entities coordinating with gaseous intelligences in environmental suits, and dozens of other species she was still learning to identify. The Alliance Command Center was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Every species had contributed their best technology to create a space where beings with wildly different physiological requirements could work together effectively. The air was carefully regulated to support multiple breathing requirements. The lighting spectrum was adjusted for various visual systems, and the workstations could accommodate everything from human hands to crystalline appendages. Admiral Reeves, who had been promoted to overall command of Alliance forces, was standing beside a holographic display showing the Kethvar system. Selena was there as well, now wearing the insignia of a commander in the Alliance fleet, her expertise in destroyer tactics making her invaluable to strategic planning. Dr. Chun, Admiral Reeves began, we've received intelligence that changes our approach to the Kethvar Prime operation. The holographic display shifted to show surveillance data from deep space reconnaissance drones. What Sarah saw made her heart sink. The Kethvar homeworld was surrounded by a massive destroyer fleet. Not just a dozen ships they had faced before, but hundreds of them, all coordinated by multiple command vessels. They've learned from their defeat, Selena explained grimly. No single command ship, but a network of control nodes. And the fleet size. She gestured helplessly at the display. Our intelligence estimates over 500 destroyer ships, Admiral Reeves continued, plus automated defense platforms and what appears to be some kind of construction facility on the planet's surface. Commander Vashtar, now serving as the Alliance's specialist in Kethvar military doctrine, spoke with obvious pain in his voice. They're not just occupying our world. They are converting it into a factory for more of their kind. Sarah studied the tactical display with growing concern. What are our options? Conventional assault would result in catastrophic losses, Admiral Reeves admitted. Even with our combined fleet, we'd be outnumbered nearly 2 to 1, and they have the advantage of prepared positions. So we don't use conventional assault, Sarah said, the words coming out before she had fully formed the thought. We use what made us successful in the first place. All eyes turned to her. Explain, Admiral Reeves commanded. Sarah moved closer to the holographic display, studying the destroyer formation with new eyes. 6 months ago, we were outnumbered 12 to 1, but we won because we did something they couldn't predict. We worked together in ways that their machine intelligence couldn't comprehend. Selena's ears perked up. Pack tactics on a fleet scale. Exactly. But more than that. Sarah's excitement grew as the idea crystallized. They've adapted to expect military resistance. They prepared for conventional fleet actions. But what if we don't give them a conventional fleet action? Chief Valdez, now serving as the Alliance's chief science officer, looked up from his console with interest. What did you have in mind, Doctor? A medical mission, Sarah said simply. The silence that followed was profound. Then, Commander Vashtar spoke, confusion evident in his voice. I do not understand. The world is occupied by enemies. What medical mission could? Exactly what they said, Sarah interrupted. It's occupied. That means there are people down there who need help. Kethvar civilians who have been under destroyer rule for months. Our mission isn't to destroy the enemy fleet. It's to evacuate the survivors. Admiral Reeves frowned. Doctor, with respect, a rescue mission against that level of opposition would be suicide. Not if we do it right. Sarah turned to Selena. Tell me about Kethvar civilian evacuation protocols. How would your people respond to a rescue attempt? Selena's amber eyes widened as she began to understand. Civilian population would cooperate fully with rescue efforts. They would emerge from hiding, move to designated extraction points. She paused, the implications hitting her. The destroyers would have to choose between maintaining fleet formation and responding to surface evacuation operations. And if they split their attention, Chief Valdez added excitedly, we could use the same divide and conquer tactics that worked before but on a massive scale. The tactical discussion that followed was unlike anything in military history. Instead of planning to destroy an enemy, they were planning to save lives while destroying an enemy. The distinction was crucial because it fundamentally changed how they approached every aspect of the operation. We'll need multiple simultaneous extraction points, Commander Vashtar mused, warming to the concept. Scattered across the planet to force maximum dispersal of enemy response. And medical facilities on every ship, Sarah added. If we're really doing this as a rescue mission, we need to be prepared to handle casualties, malnutrition, disease, all the problems that come with occupied populations. Selena was already pulling up planetary data. There are underground tunnel systems in the major cities. Natural cave networks that the civilian population could use to reach extraction points without exposure to surface defenses. The destroyers will adapt once they realize what we're doing, Admiral Reeves warned. Of course they will, Sarah agreed. But they'll adapt based on the assumption that our primary goal is military victory. They won't understand that our primary goal is actually saving lives. That misunderstanding will create tactical opportunities. The planning session extended for hours as representatives from different species contributed their expertise to what was becoming the most complex rescue operation ever attempted. The crystalline hegemony offered their advanced shield technology to protect evacuation transports. The gaseous Zephyrians volunteered their ships, which were uniquely suited for atmospheric operations. Human medical teams would coordinate treatment for rescued civilians, while Kethvar warriors provided tactical knowledge of the planetary terrain. As the details came together, Sarah realized they were creating something unprecedented, a military operation designed not to kill enemies, but to save friends. It was, she thought, the most human approach to warfare imaginable. And, thanks to their alliance with other species, it might actually work. The operation launched 3 days later with a complexity that would have been impossible for any single species to coordinate. As Alliance ships dropped out of hyperspace around Kethvar Prime, they didn't assume standard attack formation. Instead, they spread out in a pattern that confused the destroyer fleet's tactical algorithms. Sarah found herself aboard one of the evacuation transports, leading a joint human Kethvar medical team toward the planet's surface. Through the viewport, she could see the massive destroyer ships beginning to move in response to the Alliance presence. But their movements were uncertain, hesitant. They don't know how to respond, Selena observed from the co-pilot's seat. Their programming tells them to defend against military attack, but we're not attacking their strategic positions. Instead, Alliance forces were landing at refugee camps, hidden settlements, and underground shelters where Kethvar civilians had survived months of occupation. The first reports from the surface were heartbreaking. Families separated, communities destroyed, individuals who had lost hope of ever seeing freedom again. But there was something else in those reports too. Joy, desperate, overwhelming relief at seeing friendly faces and hearing friendly voices. Sarah watched through the transport's cameras as Kethvar civilians emerged from hiding places they had called home for months, many of them carrying nothing but their children and their hope. Destroyer fleet responding came to report from Admiral Reeves. They're breaking formation to intercept rescue operations. Perfect, Sarah said quietly. Now, they're fighting our kind of battle. What followed was a running engagement unlike any in the history of warfare. Alliance ships didn't try to hold positions or destroy enemy vessels. They focused entirely on protecting evacuation operations and extracting civilians. When destroyer ships moved to attack rescue transports, Alliance warships would engage just long enough to drive them off before moving to the next evacuation site. The destroyers found themselves constantly reacting instead of controlling the battle. Their tactical advantage of superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't concentrate their forces effectively. Every time they moved to crush one rescue operation, 3 more would begin at different locations. This is impossible, Chief Valdez reported from the Unity. They have us outnumbered 3-1, but they're losing tactical cohesion faster than we can track. Sarah was helping load injured civilians onto medical transports when a breakthrough came. Commander Vashtar's voice crackled over the communication network with barely contained excitement. Alliance Command, this is Ground Team 7. We've made contact with organized resistance cells. The civilian population has been preparing for exactly this kind of operation. The resistance cells, it turned out, have been planning for rescue operations since the first days of the occupation. They had mapped every tunnel system, cataloged every hidden shelter, and organized evacuation routes that could move thousands of people quickly and efficiently. More importantly, they had been sabotaging destroyer operations from within. Critical communications nodes had been damaged, supply depots had been contaminated, and automated defense systems had been programmed with subtle errors that wouldn't manifest until they were needed most. The planet is rising, Selena reported, tears streaming down her fur as she watched her people emerge from months of hiding. They're not just survivors. They are warriors who never stop fighting. The evacuation that had been planned to take days was completed in hours. Over 2 million Kethvar civilians were lifted off their homeworld and transferred to Alliance ships, along with critical data about destroyer operations and intelligence about other occupied worlds. But the most important victory wasn't tactical. It was psychological. The destroyer fleet, faced with an enemy that refused to behave according to their programmed expectations, began making increasingly erratic decisions. Ships broke formation without orders, defensive systems fired on each other, and command nodes sent contradictory instructions. They're having some kind of systems failure, Admiral Reeves reported. Multiple destroyer ships are going offline. The explanation came from an unexpected source. Elder Nixera, the crystalline being who had become the Alliance's expert on artificial intelligence, provided the analysis that changed everything. The destroyer machine intelligence is designed for efficiency and logical tactical responses, the harmonic voice explained to the translation matrix. But the rescue operation created scenarios their programming cannot process. How do you efficiently destroy an enemy whose primary goal is to save lives? How do you calculate optimal response to opponents who prioritize civilian safety over military advantage? The destroyers, faced with tactical scenarios that violated their core programming, were literally thinking themselves into paralysis. Their machine minds couldn't comprehend the concept of warfare conducted with the primary goal of preserving life rather than destroying enemies. As the last civilian transports cleared the planet's atmosphere, the destroyer fleet was in complete disarray. Ships drifted powerless, their AI systems locked in logical loops they couldn't resolve. Others had begun attacking each other, their targeting systems unable to distinguish between enemies and allies in the chaos of unprecedented tactical scenarios. All civilian evacuation complete, Admiral Reeves announced. Total rescued, 2,100,000 Kethvar citizens. Combalos, minimal. The cheers that erupted across the Alliance fleet were audible even through the vacuum of space, transmitted by communication systems that carried voices in dozens of languages and frequencies. But, for Sarah, the most meaningful sound was much quieter. The soft conversation of Kethvar families reunited after months of separation, heard through the bulkheads of the medical transport where she was treating the last of the rescued civilians. Dr. Chun, Selena's voice called from the transport's communication station. "Admiral Reeves is requesting your presence for mission debrief." "In a minute," Sarah replied, finishing her examination of an elderly Kethvar who had been injured during the evacuation. "How are you feeling, sir?" The old warrior looked up at her with golden eyes that held depths of gratitude she couldn't fully comprehend. In halting English, he said, You came back for us. No one comes back. We're pack," Sarah replied simply, using the Kethvar term that had become central to Alliance philosophy. Pack doesn't leave anyone behind. The debriefing session that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Battle of Kethvar Prime had demonstrated that superior firepower meant nothing against opponents who were willing to completely redefine the nature of warfare itself. More importantly, it had proven that the principles which had guided humanity's first contact with the Kethvar could be scaled up to galactic proportions. Compassion, cooperation, and the willingness to risk everything for strangers. These weren't just noble ideals, but practical strategies for survival in a hostile universe. The destroyer threat isn't eliminated, Admiral Reeves cautioned during his final briefing. Intelligence suggests there are still major fleets in the galactic core regions. But their tactical advantage is gone, Commander Vashtar pointed out. Every species that survived destroyer attacks now knows that resistance is possible. More importantly, they know that help will come. Selena stood to address the assembled commanders. 6 months ago, my mate died believing that beings who fight for others are stronger than those who fight only for themselves. Today, 2 million of my people live free because that belief has become the foundation of Alliance strategy. She paused, looking around the room at representatives from dozens of species. Drakon would have been proud to see how large our pack has become. As the meeting dispersed and commanders returned to their ships, Sarah found herself once again at an observation viewport, looking out at the stars. The view was different now. Instead of empty space, she saw the lights of hundreds of Alliance vessels, each one carrying survivors, refugees, and warriors who had chosen to stand together against the darkness. Captain Morrison appeared beside her, a familiar ritual by now. "Penny for your thoughts, Doc." "I was thinking about the future," Sarah replied. "About the kind of galaxy we're building." "And what kind of galaxy is that?" Sarah smiled, thinking of elderly Kethvar warriors learning to speak English so they could thank human medics, of crystalline entities composing harmonic poems about courage, of dozens of species working together toward common goals. "The kind where no one fights alone," she said. "The kind where the measure of a civilization isn't how efficiently it can destroy enemies, but how far it will go to protect friends." Through the viewport, she could see the hook in the vast emptiness of space, where civilizations measure worth by technological superiority and military might. There exists a truth that most species have forgotten. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in weapons or warships, but in the simple act of refusing to let someone die. When the Kethvar, proud wolf-like warriors who have dominated 3-star systems, encounter humanity for the first time, they expect another weak species to conquer or ignore. What they don't expect is to witness something that will shatter everything they believe about strength, honor, and what it truly means to fight for those you love. This is the story of how one dying breath, one desperate howl in the darkness of space, and one human's stubborn refusal to accept defeat changed the course of an entire galactic war. Because sometimes the most alien thing about humans isn't their technology or their tactics. It's their unbreakable belief that every life is worth saving, even when logic says otherwise.